I should have made dragon earrings to go with this game.
Oh my goodness, you should have.
I should have.
That would have been perfect.
We were just talking about how we didn't even do this on purpose. But we're kind of matching, and like the colors
all
go.
complements. We just need like
go with it.
Purple like dragon
earrings.
I
should have done that. Oh well, missed opportunity.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Board Game Buzz today. My name is Carly.
And I'm Kim.
And today we are going to be reviewing the highly anticipated game Wyrmspan from Stonemaiers Games.
You are an amateur dracologist in the world of Wyrmspan, a place where dragons of all shapes, sizes, and colors roam the skies. Excavate a hidden labyrinth you recently unearthed on your land and entice these beautiful creatures to roost in the sanctuary of your caves.
So before we share our thoughts on Wyrmspan, we're actually going to be giving you a really quick overview of how this game plays, and then we'll come back here and we'll share our thoughts on Wyrmspan. Welcome to a gameplay of Wyrmspan. We have our personal player board right here, eggs off to the side, general resources up at the top. We have our own starting supply here on the side, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, tilting the camera up a little bit, we have a few more things that I'm unable to get in the shot. But we do have this little Dragon Guild area over here, and then we also have this kind of general supply that actually shows 3 dragons and then 3 caves that players are able to choose from. We'll talk about all that in a minute, but that is kind of the general setup for a game of Wyrmspan. Now, this is definitely just a general overview of this game, so don't take this as any official how to play, but hopefully by the end of this overview, you kind of have a general idea of what is going on. Now, coming back to this general supply, at the beginning of the game, everybody starts with 6 dragon coins, 1 egg, 3 resources of their choosing apart from the coins. They also have a bunch of these little cubes within their player color. They have a little adventurer token, which goes right here. Players are also dealt 3 dragons at random and then also 3 cave cards at random. And then players will pick 4 total cards in any combination. So for this example, I'm actually going to choose to keep all 3 of these dragon cards, and then I'm going to choose to actually keep this cave card right here. So this is going to be my starting hand that I start with at the beginning of the game. In a game of Wyrmspan, you have 3 basically main actions that you are doing. You are excavating, enticing, or exploring one of your 3 cave systems that you have on this personal player mat in front of you. If you are familiar with the original Wingspan game, you definitely are going to see some similarities between these 2 games. But there definitely are some core differences, and the biggest one being are going to be these coins up here that you get at the beginning of every round. These coins over here are actually what you're going to be using to kind of, in a sense, purchase your actions or do your actions. Basically kind of consider them like action discs. So I will kind of explain how they are used as we go about explaining these 3 main actions that you can do throughout the game. Starting with excavate, when you choose this action, you will actually play 1 of your dragon coins, placing it right there on your board. And what you are actually going to be doing is you are going to be playing a cave card from your hand, and you are going to be placing it in the leftmost empty space of one of your 3 caves. This is important because before you can entice your dragons to come and live in these caves, you actually need to kind of carve out a place for them to go. All of the cave cards have basically instant bonuses that you are able to perform once you successfully place them into one of your caves. So for example, when I play this card, I automatically can gain a meat, and I can also lay an egg. All of them are different. There's a ton, so many different abilities, but yeah, so these cave cards are really nice because they just give you a bunch of kind of instant abilities as you play them out. The next action that you can choose to do is entice. Enticing is basically playing dragons into your cave systems. When you choose this action, you will select one of your dragon coins, placing it on the entice slot, indicating that you'll be performing that action. And then you will choose a dragon to play into one of your cave systems. You obviously have to pay for it. So if I wanted to play this dragon, I would have to spend 2 purple gems in order to do so. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that. And then also on the side of the dragon, it shows and indicates what cave system it can be played into. So for example, this dragon can only be played into the purple cave slot right there. Just to help illustrate this a little bit more, this is an example of a dragon that can be played into all 3 slots, either the Crimson Cavern, the Golden Grotto, or the Amethyst Abyss. Now, very much like the birds in Wingspan, all of these dragons do give you special abilities. So this little timer on this dragon that I just said means at the end of every round. So at the end of every round, this dragon goes ahead and activates, and I'm able to lay a dragon egg on each dragon in this cave, so this purple cave here, that is not aggressive. So again, what that timer means is at the end of every round, I'm able to perform this. This dragon gives you end game bonuses that you score at the end of the game, and then this blue forest spirit has this little adventure symbol on it, which we're going to chat about right now. So that symbol that I just showed you, it links up with this explore action. Exploring is when you're actually able to move through your caves and activate abilities and gain resources. It's very similar to how the action cubes work in Wingspan. When you do explore, there is a certain cost associated with that action. So, for example, if I was to explore this Amethyst Abyss, the first time I went through and explored it, I would need to pay 1 dragon coin. The second time would be a dragon coin and an egg, and then the third would be a dragon coin and 2 eggs. I'm bringing the camera down a little bit more to help illustrate this point a little bit more, but when I choose to explore, again, that's the first time I'm going through this cave this round, so I'll go ahead and pay a coin, and I will take my little adventure and I will go through my cave, stopping at every single one of these symbols that I find as I move through my cave, and then I activate whatever ability is shown. So, for example, I'll move my adventure, stop here, and I will actually be able to gain a cave card from the display that I showed you earlier. Then I would move on to this dragon, and if this dragon had an adventure symbol, then I'd be able to activate it, but it doesn't, so I'm going to now move on to the next spot, which is this little Dragon Guild symbol, so let's chat about that really quick. This Dragon Guild here is unique to Wyrmspan. Wingspan doesn't have anything like this, but in this Dragon Guild, whenever you encounter this symbol throughout the game, whether you are exploring your caverns or you lay down one of your caves and it gives you this ability, what that means is you basically advance along this track. When you advance, you go ahead and claim whatever spot you land on. So by advancing here, I would gain an egg. If, however, I advance onto this location, what that means is I can actually use one of these little action cubes that I have and claim one of these things. Some of them give you just simply end game points. Some give you different abilities. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and claim this ability, and I will gain 1 dragon coin and be able to lay 2 eggs for free. So this is definitely a race, kind of like a little racing element. It's nice because it adds a little bit more interaction throughout the game, something that players are trying to compete and fight over. So again, if we advanced and we were right here and I hit this location, I would be able to again add another cube onto this guild here and be able to claim those points now at the end of the game. Now the guild that's showing right here, this is the Plains Guild, double-sided for 2 to 3 players, and then the higher player count side, but the game actually comes with 3 more of these little these scoring areas, so every time you play you can kind of switch out what abilities you want to be fighting over throughout the game. So coming back to the board now, after we activated our Dragon Guild ability, now if you notice we actually hit this stop sign. When you hit that stop sign, that means you have completed your explore action and you move your little explore worker back to its base camp that is shown off here on the side of the board. You can see as the more dragons you entice into your cave systems, your caves actually generate more and more for you and become more powerful for you as the game goes on. You can see in this purple amethyst abyss area, next time I go to explore it, if my board looked like this, I would actually be able to move through the entire cave system, going to this end row that has some pretty powerful abilities for you. So those are the 3 actions: the excavate, entice, and exploring. So players will continue going around the table performing these actions until they decide to pass. Now when they decide to pass, it is usually because they have exhausted or spent all of their dragon coins for all of their actions, but once that happens and everybody has passed, then we proceed to end of round scoring. If you are familiar with Wingspan, this board will look very familiar to you, but the game is played over 4 rounds, and at the end of every round we go ahead and we score a certain objective that can be switched out throughout the game. The game comes with quite a few of these little tiles. They're all double-sided, and so for example this round we'll go ahead and it's nice because the board lays out exactly what you do at the end of every round. So you go through and activate all of your dragons that have this symbol on them, and then for example this game, what we were doing is we were scoring all of the playful dragons that are on your player mat at that time. For example, if I had the most, then I would use one of these little cubes here, claiming that I had won that. I'd gotten first place. Then you go ahead and you do all these little middle abilities here. So you refresh the dragon and cave card area. Everybody gains 6 dragon coins back plus 1 egg, and then you go ahead and move on to the second round at that point. So yes, unlike Wingspan, where you have these little action cubes and you lose 1 every single round, you actually gain all of your actions back at the beginning of the next round. So you always are gaining 6 dragon coins. And something that I wanted to mention is that these coins, you do have abilities to gain more throughout the game. Some dragons can activate abilities that give you coins. Like we mentioned on the Dragon Guild, up here there actually is a spot to gain an extra coin. So while you do gain 6, you're actually not limited to 6 actions throughout the round. Something I did fail to mention at the beginning of the game, but at the beginning of every round and at the beginning of the game, you actually gain an egg. And on your player mat here, different from Wingspan, you actually have 2 extra places to store eggs. Obviously, all of your dragons can generate spots for you. So like this dragon generates 4 spaces for me to place eggs. But yeah, your player mat inherently, you have 2 spots, two extra spots to store eggs. So that is basically how turns work, is you'll just pick an action, usually you have to pay a coin in order to do so, and then once you're out of actions you pass, and then you go on to the next round, and once those 4 rounds are over, then that triggers the end of the game. The scoring is very similar to Wingspan in regards to you'll be scoring up the inherent points that are on your dragons. You'll also score up endgame abilities, 1 point per egg that you still have remaining on your board, along with cash resources, tucked cards, and then public objectives. You also do you do get points for any remaining coins you have left over, and then also 1 point per 4 resource, or any 4 combination of resource, dragon cards, or cave cards that you have. And then whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. All right, so we're going to kind of do something a little bit different with this review versus some of our other reviews. Most of the time when I do reviews, we kind of jump in right into the stuff that we like and the stuff that we don't like. We're going to do a little bit of a segment here kind of chatting about the differences between Wyrmspan and Wingspan, because I know that this is it's titled as a Wingspan game. I know so many people are going to be like, what is the difference between this and Wingspan? Like, do I need this game if I have Wingspan? If I don't like Wingspan, would I like this game? So let's chat a little bit about that. I think the biggest thing for me is this whole cave system where you have to actually cave out your landscape before you can attract your dragons. Basically, these caves just act as instant abilities. And so being able to kind of lay down cards that just give you instant abilities, that's definitely something that is different from Wingspan.
In Wingspan, as you're placing birds, you have to pay an egg essentially to do the birds. That doesn't apply to the dragons this time around. It applies to the caves.
To the caves where you're paying that egg.
You're doing the egg to excavate. The next difference between Wingspan and Wyrmspan is the addition of this Dragon Guild that is in this game. Sometimes when you're playing dragons or you're exploring or you're laying cave cards, you get the ability you earn a Dragon Guild, and then you get to move your one of your tokens along the track here. And then as soon as your token lands and advances to each spot, then you get to gain that bonus.
So another big difference in this game is in Wingspan you have little action cubes, and those are basically determine your actions throughout the game. In this game you actually have, I think are they dragon coins? Or are they just coins? They might be dragon coins. Yeah. They're these really cool coins, and so instead of using your action cubes throughout the game, you actually use these coins. And what makes these coins actually slightly interesting is you don't just use these to determine actions, you also use these to entice your dragons to the cave, and certain other stuff. And so it's a little bit of an interesting puzzle, because sometimes you're like, okay, I could use this coin, is this coin really worth giving up an action for?
Yes.
And so there are multiple uses from these coins, and you actually can also gain coins throughout your rounds. And so some rounds, you might start off with 6 coins. I believe that's what you start at the beginning of the round, 6 coins. But if you're able to gain a couple more coins throughout the game, you can use those for turns. So you can actually lengthen out your turns. So these are slightly more, I don't know if dynamic is the right word, but kind of than the action cubes.
I would say so, yeah.
There's like more that you can do with these.
In addition to that, like we said, each round you start with 6, and then in Wingspan, I think you start off with 8 action cubes.
Yes.
And those decrease each round, right? Because you're taking one of those cubes and you're claiming like one of the rewards that you get for each round. These stay stagnant. You start with 6 each time. And Wingspan, you have you do one of those, you have those 4 main actions that you do: play a bird, lay eggs. I can't think of all of them right now. But
draw birds, get food, and lay eggs.
Yeah, and then play a bird.
And then play a bird, yes, yeah.
And then you take your action cube and you put it in that, like the spot where you're at along the track, and then you go through and you activate like each bird if it has an activate ability. In this case, in Wyrmspan, you don't have that necessarily. You have to do specifically an explore action is the only time where you're going to go through and like activate abilities. So that is also different. It's not like this activate ability that happens each time you do an action. It's like something you have to actually go out and decide
actively
to do.
Yeah. Yes.
Another main difference is that we don't have a bird feeder in this game like you do in Wingspan, where you roll the dice and then there is a limited pool of resources available and people are kind of clamoring over.
Kind of like harder to get resources, like what you need.
Yeah. And this game, there's no bird feeder, there's no dice. You just get to, so you essentially there's other ways to gain resources, like different dragons you play. Cave cards are going to give you resources. Like this one says gain meat and lay an egg. But the main way would be to do the explore action where you go up through this cave and it says gain a resource when you explore this spot. And then you just get to pick what you want. You don't have to pick from a certain pool of resources.
It definitely feels slightly easier to gain resources in this game. There's kind of more options available to do that. And I will kind of go into more detail on this and chat about it a little bit later. But as you are moving through and exploring and going through each of your caves, you do actually get a lot more out of your turns versus in Wingspan, personally. That's definitely how I felt. As I was going through, I kept, like, every time I go through, and especially when I had a really big cave with, like, lots of dragons or stuff that I had unlocked, I remember thinking, like, wow, I'm getting, like, so much this turn. So you are able to, your board actually generates a lot more for you than the boards in Wingspan.
The obvious difference that we missed here is that we're dealing with dragons and not birds.
That's probably the biggest.
That's the biggest difference here.
Dragons versus birds.
Yep.
There are a handful of other more like kind of minor differences between Wyrmspan and Wingspan, but those are kind of the big ones. Those were, at least in my opinion, those were kind of the biggest differences between the game. But I kind of wanted to jump in now and kind of share what we liked and what we didn't like in regards to Wyrmspan. So starting off with what we liked, I think the biggest thing for me was I loved how I really loved that the boards generate so much more for you than in Wingspan. So it's kind of interesting, but in Wingspan, I mean, I'm sure most people watching this have played Wingspan. But as you are going through and laying down your cards, you actually are covering up that ability for like if you're laying eggs and you have a bunch of birds in like your laid eggs area and you go to lay another egg, well, technically you're actually covering up abilities as you lay birds out in within your apiary thing. This game actually doesn't do that. As you lay out, it's actually the exact opposite.
Yeah.
As you lay out dragons, you get those dragons' abilities and you actually continue to unlock places on the board, and the board itself will continue. So not only are you generating resources and generating abilities from your dragons, you're also generating from the board. So I kind of mentioned this before and like the differences and between this and Wingspan. I loved that in this game because as you were going through, literally every time I took that explore action, and especially on caves that I had a lot of dragons in, you would go through and literally I'd be like, I'm gaining like so much. That was personally my favorite part of this game was just how much you were able to generate.
So one thing that I really liked about Wyrmspan is I really liked having the cave cards and the added layer, I guess, that they, or like depth that they gave to the game. Being able to, like, first I have to go ahead and I have to excavate first. I have to, like, create my cave. One of the things I think that made the cave cards so satisfying is that they give you this instant ability. As soon as you put them down, you get whatever it says on here. And there were a few times, it wasn't overdone, but it was like a few times where I could, like, plan out as much as I could, playing a cave card that would give me an ability that would then, like, kind of trigger something else to happen. And you would end up having, like, 3 things that would happen, and it would end up being, like, feeling like this mega turn, and it would feel so, like, satisfying.
You'd be like, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, where, like, I was able to effectively puzzle it all together to get to have my turn that would, like, trigger those things to happen. And that was a really, like, fun and satisfying thing for me.
So they definitely didn't have to do this, and it doesn't really add much to the game, but I thought it was so fun.
Oh, yeah.
Just to kind of go with the dragon theme. That with the game, it actually comes with this, like, dragon book where it goes through, and it kind of has, like an audio, or not audio. It has, like, a little, like, what's the word? Facts. Thank you. Facts about all the dragons in the game, because there are so many different dragons, and I loved. It was so fun to have this, especially when I saw a particularly, like, pretty dragon or dragon that I really liked. I was like, ooh, I'm going to go through this book and I'm going to read about this dragon. So me being like, I love theme in games. It's like a super big thing for me. It was just such a fun touch.
When Carly told me...
I'm so glad you're saying this, because I...
Yes. When Carly told me about this game about Wyrmspan, and she was getting a copy of it to review, and she told me that it was about dragons. I, like, gasped. I was like,
audibly gasped.
Yes, because it's like, for me, and I know, like, if you are a super Wingspan fan, maybe you'll be like, whatever, Kim, to my comment, but I mean, I love dragons ever since I was a kid. When I was in elementary school, I was, like, obsessed with drawing dragons. In fact, I had, like, kids in my class who would ask me to draw dragons for them. I always loved dragons. If you ask me what my favorite animal was, I'm like, dragons.
Of course.
Yeah, if you're like me and you have a great love of dragons and, like, dragon lore, and just kind of delve more into fantasy world and wish you could go dragon watching, like how people can go bird watching. If you wish that you could go dragon watching, like, okay, you can play this game and you get to kind of, like, experience a little glimpse of that. And that kind of segues into the next thing that I love is, and I don't know if Carly was much on board with the artwork as I was, but I loved the artwork, and I loved the cover. I love, like I said, because I love drawing dragons, and it, like, inspires me as an artist, I guess.
I liked a lot about the artwork. I had a couple little nitpicks, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but especially the dragons. I loved the dragons. Yeah. The dragons were beautiful. They were all so cool. So kind of going along with this, or kind of going along with what Kim mentioned, I do think that this will appeal to people who are super against Wingspan because of the theme. Because I know that there are people out there who have kind of steered clear of Wingspan, or Wingspan didn't really kind of hit them as much as others because of the theme, because of that bird theme. For me, I love the theme in Wingspan, but I can understand why some people won't. And so I think this, like, fantastical theme, I think it will help draw those people in.
And I like this Dragon Guild a lot, even though it seems so simple. I really liked it. What I liked about it is that it kind of felt like this little bit of a race that happened over here, like a slow race, granted.
Yes.
But, like, it created this extra little level of suspense. Then the fact that it also allowed me to chain things a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of chain reaction that can happen with different things. So for me, I liked the addition of the Dragon Guild.
It's kind of something that everybody around the table is actively kind of fighting over, or trying to get to certain scoring objectives first.
Yeah.
So it definitely it helps the game not feel so multiplayer solitaire. Like, I know when we were playing, like, I saw Kim kind of racing ahead of that. I'm like, man, I've got to hurry and catch up, because I know exactly what she's going to claim, and I want to claim that before she can. So it does add a little bit more tension to the game. So I might have already kind of mentioned this, but I do feel like this is a slightly more complex complex version of Wingspan. Now, it's not complex by any means. If you're a heavy gamer, you're not going to think this is like a heavy, complex game, but it is more complicated than Wingspan. And so if you are a heavier gamer, if you do like kind of like bigger games, I would recommend trying this because it does feel similar to Wingspan, but there is more going on and it's kind of more thinky. You kind of have to plan out your turns a little bit more. So I would recommend this for, you know, kind of more heavier gamers, kind of, who might have thought Wingspan was too light.
I played Wingspan before I played this, but it was like months.
Long time ago.
Played this, and then I went back and played Wingspan again, so it would be all fresh in my mind. And I was like, oh, this is like way more simpler than I remember it being.
And especially after playing this. Yeah.
After playing this, and like, oh, it's more different than I realized too. And I actually found myself like a little bit bored playing Wingspan. So like if you're one of those few people that doesn't really love Wingspan, because I know it's a very beloved game, but there are those people out there
who don't like
it. And if it didn't quite like crack like that itch for you, like you see the appeal of it, you can see why maybe people like it, but like it just you might enjoy this one more because it is just a little bit more like layered and crunchy. So now we've talked about the things that we really like about the game, and now we're going to kind of dive into the things that we might not have liked as much, or we can see other people not liking or struggling with. And for me, the first thing that I disliked were, and I wouldn't say I dislike them now, but
it was confusing. How about that?
Yeah, are the dragon coins. For whatever reason, and the other people I played it with said that they actually struggled with it at first too.
Truthfully, everybody that I've played this with has given us this feedback, and we felt very strongly our very first play of this.
Yeah, like my first few turns, my brain, for whatever reason, I'm like, I don't know what, like, because these are essentially the action discs that you have in Wingspan. I have started calling them action coins. They are action coins that are multi-use, and I have to think of them as workers, essentially, or because if I'm thinking about them like a resource, because that's initially I feel like how they are played off, because you think of them as coins, something you pay, something to like get something, which so I had to reframe the way that I think about them I don't know why. Maybe for some people that's not a problem, but for the people that we've talked to and played with, because Carly said that she like struggled too when she was watching me like visibly struggle to make.
I was like laughing. So when we sat down to play this, I saw Kim. We started playing the game, and I didn't say anything because I had played the game before Kim. So I didn't tell her anything. I just had her go into it open-minded. And the first couple rounds, you were struggling so bad with the coins that I was laughing because I had the exact same struggle the first time. And I think the reason why is because when you are using your actions, or when you're using your coins, I mean, sometimes you have to place them. Well, sometimes you place them on the board, which is confusing for me. The fact that you're spending resources, but they remain on your board, and they are resources. They're not like action cubes like they are in Wingspan, where they're completely separate. Yeah. The fact that your resources that you spend remain on your board, for whatever reason, it kept throwing me off.
Yeah, like especially the combination of like coin and egg, like. When you are paying an egg to excavate, you're putting your egg there. But then when you're doing it to
do this, then your egg goes on the board.
What is this when you're
exploring?
Oh yeah, when you're exploring. So like if you excavate, you put your coin here, and then you discard an egg to like go further along. When you're enticing, you put the coin here. But then when you want to explore, you put it over here. And then if you're going to explore again, you put the coin and the egg, but then you have your two eggs down here
you have your two eggs out there that are storing, so it's
more mental energy.
Kept throwing me off. I kept getting confused, especially with the eggs, because I would just look down and be like, oh, I've got 5 eggs, and it's like, oh wait, I've actually spent one of them. This actually isn't on a dragon. I actually only have 4, but it's still on my mat. It feels a little disjointed to me.
Yeah.
So yes, that's something that we struggled with our first play. After your first play, you get it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
But it is kind of weird. And something that I wanted to mention, it's so weird that there's a place to put your coins when you explore, but then when you excavate and you entice, you are instructed to keep these, you're instructed to put them on the ability that you're doing, but there's not an actual place
there's not
for
an
them.
icon to put it.
Yes, and so there's sometimes where I would forget, and I would put it into the supply, and then I'd be like, oh wait, I was actually supposed to put it on my board. When we're talking about it, I'm like, people probably think we're idiots. But for whatever reason, it just kept messing with my head.
I think my other dislikes for the game, or things that like maybe I had a little bit of like issue with, because maybe they're not necessarily no, this one is, I guess, a dislike. Yeah. Like I just wish it was different. But it could be board game snobby of me. Is that we have these player mats that are super cool, and I mean, obviously they're your player boards and you need them to play the game. I just wish they had made them, or figured out some way. You have a spot to store eggs. I just wish there was also a spot on here to store like my resources, my gem, my meat, my milk, my gold, because maybe I've been spoiled by a lot of player mats that have like specific spots to store your resources. So I'm just like, I wanted that for this game.
My little nitpick with the game, which this was just an idea that I kind of had while we were playing, so it definitely isn't like a big problem with the game, but you have these cave carts, which are so cool. Yeah. They're so cool. They're all so pretty. They're all kind of unique and different. And then you go ahead and you cover them up with your dragons. And so I was like, I really wish that there would have been a way that like the middle of the card could have been a little bit like see-through or transparent or something, so when you actually place your dragons onto your caves, you can still see the cave card underneath.
I didn't see necessarily like a strong theme for why like the impenetrable red worm is in a crimson cavern versus a golden
why it
grotto.
Can't go into the amethyst abyss.
So what I thought would have been cool, because it just seemed like it was just kind of random, like, yeah, this one goes in here. What I thought would have been cool is if they had done more of like we have our mountain that we're trying to draw dragons to, right? But like at the top was like the snowy, cold part of the mountain, and so you have like dragons that are more wintry and snowy and thrive in like an ice kind of environment, and then the middle is just like that basic foresty, thick kind of vegetation that you can get in the mountain, and then like the bottom part is like the underground. You're getting like the lava and deep into like the I don't know. To me,
and it would have been cool to have dragons that were like half and half. You know, like a half snowy, half like. You know,
or the
forest
dragon that could survive in any.
All of them.
All of them. Like, to me, that would have just been, like, a cool, more thematic thing.
It would have made it a little more thematic, because in Wingspan, it's pretty clear. I mean, sometimes it's not as clear. And sometimes it's like, why does this bird go here? But, I mean, like, the ducks are in the water. Like, that makes sense. You know what I mean? So to have something similar like that, where, like, the artwork on the dragon kind of helped show why, like if you had a super lava dragon, well, of course it goes in the lava. Yeah, you know,
you're saying it better than what I was saying. No, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
So another thing that I kind of wished was slightly different is you were talking about how much you liked the Dragon Guild. I did really like the Dragon Guild as well, but something that I wish it would have been more of like a track system, and like you could pick, like you could decide what track you want to move up or something, because there were times throughout the game
like in
where
Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Almost kind of like that, because there were times where I was like, okay, if I increase on the Dragon Guild and I get an egg, I don't need an egg right now. What I need is, you know, like a meat or something. So it'd be interesting if it was more of like, like a track system where you had like two options or something, and as you're moving up the track, you can, I feel like that would help benefit me a little bit more and kind of give me a little bit more incentive. Obviously you have the incentives on the middle of the Dragon Guild, which you're kind of working towards. But it would have been nice to have a little bit more option of like, or a choice, I guess I could say, a little bit more of a choice of like what you gain. So another thing, and I understand why they did it, because it sounds really nice, but it kept throwing me off.
It did for me
too. The excavate, entice, and explore, because they all start with E's and they sound really similar. It kept throwing me off. Like, okay, I'm going I'm going to entice, or I'm going to inspire. Like, it kept throwing me off how they all started with an E.
Maybe the 3E things would be fine for some not sleep-deprived mothers. Mothers who have newborns.
It kept throwing me off.
When you have mom brain, you have pregnancy brain, you're like, I just need a clear-cut thing that's not going to get jumbled up in my brain.
It's not a huge thing, but it kept getting... Yes, mixed up within my brain.
So just beware of that, I would say.
So I know that this obviously being like a Wingspan game, it's basically Wingspan. The biggest question that people are going to ask is, if I have Wingspan, do I need this game? I know like a handful, it was last year when Everdell and Everdell Farshore came out. Mm-hmm. And when I had that review, I was honest. I was like, okay, If you have Everdell, you do not need Everdell Farshore. It is essentially the same game. There's like two differences, but it's essentially the same game. For me personally, I don't quite know the answer to this question, because I do believe, like, if you love Wingspan and you play Wingspan all the time and it's super satisfying to you and you don't need anything more from it, then maybe you don't need this.
Yeah.
But if you have, dived into Wingspan, thousands of times, and you're kind of looking for something a little bit new, or if you are a heavier gamer, again, I don't want to say that this is a heavy game, because it's not, but it is heavier than Wingspan. And so if you like a little bit more complexity with your games, then I would recommend this over Wingspan, because like you said, going back to Wingspan now, after I did the same thing. I played Wingspan after playing this game, and I was like, oh, this is really simple compared to this.
Yeah.
And so if you do like a slightly heavier game, and especially like if this like artwork and like the dragon theme pulls you in more, then I would absolutely recommend this. But what do you think? Do you think if people have Wingspan, like, would you recommend for them to get this game as well? Does it feel different enough for you?
For me, yes. So my husband put it as Wyrmspan and Wingspan are cousins. They're not siblings. So there's enough differences, or there's like flavors that are similar, but there's enough differences that you kind of feel like you're playing a different game. Me personally, it's like, now I have Wingspan and I have a couple of the expansions for it, but I'm like, no, I like Wyrmspan enough too that I would also like to have
this in your collection as well.
have it in my collection.
And I feel the same way. It's like I love Wingspan, but I equally love this, and I do feel like it is a different enough game, and I feel bad because I feel like there has been some heat that people have been like freaking out, like, we don't need another Wingspan game, or why are we doing? So I feel bad that people are doing that, because it is a different game.
Yeah.
Like it is different. Yes, it has similar undertones. There are a million games out there that have similar undertones.
Yeah.
Millions of games that have similar undertones of other games. You know what I mean?
The reason why I personally would like to own, like, have this in addition to Wingspan is that, like I said, for me, I went back and I played Wingspan, and it was just like almost too simple. I'm like, it didn't quite crack some of the more grittiness that I sometimes want in a board game experience. But what is so beautiful about Wingspan is that I was like, I can sit and I can play it with my kids, my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old. But for me, if it's night, put the kids to bed, and I'm in the mood to play something where I'm like, let's go dragon hunting. I don't know, like where I want to play something that is a little bit more
heavier.
meatier. Yeah, I would pull this one out instead of Wingspan. I would also add, if you didn't like Wingspan, and I touched on this a little bit before, because it just is simple, or you didn't like the theme, then maybe
try
you would
this.
like this.
You might
one.
like this, because it definitely, like I said, it definitely has similar undertones, but it is different enough that, I would definitely recommend people, if Wingspan didn't work for you, still try this.
Yeah.
It still might not work for you, but it might. I do think it is a different game than Wingspan, absolutely. All right, so we're coming into kind of our final thoughts and ratings here. Do you care who starts?
Yep.
Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and start. I really enjoyed this. When I first heard about the game, I was like, I was really nervous, because I love, like, Wingspan's like a top 20 game for me. It's like one of my favorite games of all time. I absolutely love it. And I played this, and the very first time I played this, I was like, yeah, I still like Wingspan more. This is cool, but I still like Wingspan more. But the more I've played this has just continued to grow for me. And I feel like I'm now at the point where this might beat Wingspan for me personally. I really do like it, and like I said, just the more I play it and the more I kind of dive into this puzzle, I think the biggest thing for me is I just love how much the board generates for you. So for me, I'm rating this an 8.5, and I this might rise up. This might become a 9 game for me, but for me, I'm sitting at an 8.5, and personally, I like Wingspan and Wyrmspan equally right now. I really like them both. Like you said, I feel like they're both just good for different occasions.
Yes.
Wingspan for slightly lighter, this for slightly heavier kind of gaming experience. So yeah, that's where I'm at with Wingspan, or Wyrmspan, sorry, is an 8.5.
My final rating for Wingspan is a 7. After I play Wingspan, I'm like, okay, that was enjoyable, that was fun, and then I can put it back. I don't feel like I want to play another game of it. With this one, it leaves that like part of excitement for me where I finish playing it and I'm like, oh, that was like, ooh, like, I don't know, I want to do it again, or think about what I might have done differently more, or like, what can I do next time, and what dragons are going to come out next time. Like I said, it's just, so for me, my final rating ends up being an 8. And like, an 8 for me is, in general, I'll give a game a rating of 8, at least an 8, if it leaves me like wanting more
to play it again,
and wanting to play it again, and to like play it with others and see what others think and whatnot. I enjoy Wingspan, and I think it's one that's worth having in your collection. Definitely for all the reasons I already gave, but like this one too. This one just does it a little bit more for me for a variety of different reasons. So yeah, my final rating is an 8.
All right, so those are all of our thoughts on the brand new game Wyrmspan from Stonemaiers Games. Huge shout out to Stonemaiers Games for sending us this copy to review today. If you are looking forward to playing this game, please let me know why you are excited about this release in the comments below. We love going through and reading all the comments. I know other people enjoy doing that too. So yeah, please let us know all of your thoughts in the comments below.
And if you enjoyed watching this review today, be sure to like and follow, and stay tuned for other reviews and Kickstarter previews that are coming to...
We've got lots that are coming down the deadline.
Coming to Board Game Buzz this year in 2024.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
One of the games that I liked playing was Dragonology, and that game was like not a good game.
Wait, that's a game?
Yeah, Dragonology. Yeah, it's also a book.
Okay, because I was gonna say, I knew it was a book, or at least I had a book called Dragonology. That was like,
yes.
You would like.
So they made a board game of it, and it's like,
I didn't know that.
It's a very like mediocre game. Like you probably rate
so
it
this
like
is much better.
a 4, but I like playing it because it's dragons.
Because of dragons. When I was young, we would go on lots of like family road trips. And I would sit and look out the window for like hours, or we would drive up to like Washington or Oregon or something. And I'd look out the window, and I'd have a little dragon that I would be flying along.
Oh my gosh, that is really cute.
And I would just sit for literally like hours, just like imagining my little
your
dragon like
flying.